Good morning, and thanks for joining us here on Treasure Coast Solutions. Every Wednesday morning from 9 to 10 o'clock, we talk about some of the things that are happening in the world, some of the things that may be on the horizon for you, and some of the things that you may want to look at, some of the things that are coming up that might impact you here locally in Stewart. We're not a financial planning show. We don't even know what we are here. And now I'm speaking in the collective, so I must have something in my pocket because it's just me. There's no we. Evan's going to eat breakfast or something. I don't know. He's out of here. But no, it is a community service program. How much of a community service program, I have no idea, but I'll let you decide. But it is a program where we get to discuss some of the things that are happening from an economic standpoint, and of course, some of that also is political. But generally, we're talking about some of the things that are going on in the world today. So let's see, what topic should we hit? Is there anything that's significant that may be having an economic impact on people today? I just, it's tough to come up with topics on a slow week like this. But I guess maybe the coronavirus might be something to talk about, and some economic impact. First, good news. Those of you out there that have been waiting for your stimulus check your bank account, because some people have already gotten theirs. Some people haven't, so it may take a while. Probably depends on what's going on. But realistically, the money is in for the stimulus. So that should be coming out. And check, it's like I say, check your bank account, because it's a direct deposit into your bank account. You may or may not get notification, but it's going directly into your bank account. So go ahead and take a look at it. Also, those of you that filed your economic impact disaster loans, now I'm not talking about your payroll protection program. I'm not talking about that. That is the one that goes through the banks, and that funding is based on the banks and when they get the money to you, which their funding is based on when the SBA gives them a number and when the SBA approves the funding. So that may be a little bit, that may take a while, and you still need to look at that and get the money in. If you haven't applied, you need to apply. And we can talk about what's involved in the application process of that. If you've got some questions, 220-9788, 220-WSTU. I'll be happy to address the questions the best I know if you need assistance with some of that. But the economic impact disaster loan, which was the one that I was encouraging everyone to file first and get it in, and remember, it got all bogged up in the SBA. Well, they transferred it to Rocket Mortgage. I mentioned that a couple weeks ago. They transferred it out of the SBA into Rocket Mortgage. There was a delay because they had to transfer all the applications over. In fact, some people had to reapply. If they had applied on the old platform, the old SBA platform, they had to reapply. Now, that would have been somebody who applied before March 30th. So just so you know, that was a while ago. But those are the ones that are starting to come out now, and they're starting to come out pretty quickly. So if you had filed an application on the new form, which was a short, abbreviated form, you didn't have to really submit any documents, you should start seeing your money. What they've done, though, is originally they were going to just do $10,000 up front, and then they were going to do, and then the rest of it would come supposedly within 3 weeks, 3 to 4 weeks. Of course, it's been almost 3 weeks now, 2.5. But what they're doing instead, they say, to make the money go further, which I don't know how the SBA administration was able to do this when that's not the law. But what they did is they're restricting the first payment to $1,000 per employee. Now, the interesting thing is, for the economic impact disaster loan, you don't have to have any employees, and that really isn't kind of fair, because what happened is most of the people that applied for that needed that money for other expenses. They need the money for their rent, which you can use the PPP for that, but there's not enough money in the PPP to cover that. This economic disaster loan was much larger, and that's where, and frankly, that's the funding that's going to save people. The PPP stuff's getting a lot of attention. That's only 2.5 months, people. That's already been spent. I mean, there's been over a month where people have been paid and revenue isn't coming in. or has been significantly depleted and people have been paying employees out of pocket, that money, that's what the economic impact disaster loan was for, was to make up for some of those other expenses that aren't covered, the overhead expenses and operating expenses. Keep in mind that the PPP, you don't get that loan. Uh, it becomes a loan, not forgiven. It's not forgiven if you don't use at least 75% for payroll costs. And it's their definition of payroll costs. So I just want to make it clear that, if you're holding out some hope that the PPP is going to be able to be used for interest and utilities and mortgage interest and other things like that, then you may want to take a second look at that, because you can use it for that and they will loan you the money for that. But that's not how you determine the amount that's forgiven. The amount that's forgiven is based solely on payroll costs. Payroll costs have to be 75% or more of the total of your loan. So if you've miscalculated the payroll costs, you may have a hurdle that, or you've pulled up too much of a loan because you included a lot of those other things in it. You may not be able to reach the 75% of payroll costs if you spend any of your loan on anything else. So you need to be careful there, because a lot of people are counting on that as being money that they can use to pay their employees from the government. And it's not. It's going to be from you, because you're going to have to borrow it and you're going to have to pay it back within 2 years. It's not even a really good SBA loan. Most SBA loans, you can get a 10-year amortization on a working capital loan, or at least 5. This is 2. And, typically a typical SBA 7A loan, 10-year amortization at, 4 or 5% would be a pretty good, would be the standard terms. And the thing is, on the economic impact disaster loan, that money was long term. That money is there for you to use over 30 years, and to get yourself back on your feet. And depending upon how long this thing stretches out, it really would be important to have that money, because that money doesn't have the restrictions on it. It's anything that's working capital. So it doesn't have the restrictions on it that the other loan has. It is a loan, though, but it's a 3.75% fixed rate for 30 years. That's as good as a home mortgage, really. No collateral. There, you don't have to put up real estate for collateral or anything like that, like you would in a normal SBA loan. And so, you may have to give up some receivables or some inventory or something like that, but you can even get that released if you need to utilize that in your working capital. So, basically it becomes unsecured. There's a guarantee on it if it's over 200,000, I think, is where they're going to draw the line there. So anything over $200,000, you'd have to personally guarantee, but it's an unsecured personal guarantee. There's no collateral. So, there's really not anything they can go after. They can't go after your house, and those kind of things, because, it's an unsecured personal guarantee. So that loan is a big deal, and it should be, a large number that comes in. So just wanted to make that clear. Effective last Friday, sole proprietors and independent contractors could file for the PPP loan. That was confusing because there was no clarification as to how you would determine income for a self-employed person, because they probably wouldn't have their 2019 tax return done yet. And so you'd be basing it on 2018 numbers, which may have been good or bad. And then the other question was, well, how are you going to determine whether or not you spent the money on that purpose when you didn't know what your net income was going to be for 8 weeks? I mean, most businesses can't calculate a true net income for 8 weeks, especially if they're cash basis like a sole proprietor or an independent contractor, because, during the 8 weeks, do you pay your cell bill, for example, which is your cell phone's used in the business? Do you pay it during that 8 weeks? If you do, that would reduce your net income. If you don't, your net income's higher. So if you're trying to qualify for more, you just don't pay those bills during that 8-week period of time. So it's kind of confusing. And and there was no clarification. Last night, now after most people have filed, remember the 10th was the day that all the banks were telling you better get your application in, because if you don't, you're gonna miss out. Well, and we may, if the if Pelosi doesn't come around, get off this thing, we are going to run out of money. I mean, that would be a travesty. Small business is suffering big time. I mean, big time, and they are going out and never recovering, and we're within a couple of weeks of that. So if she sits around and tries to get her agenda pushed through, and she's successful in about 2 or 3 or 4 weeks in doing that, don't bother with the money, Nancy. We don't need it. There's no business to save. We've already closed. And all of those people are unemployed. And all of those working poor that you don't care about will have already been trying to get unemployment, which they can't because the system has crashed because there's too many people unemployed, or they'll be standing in the food line. Oh, wait a minute. That is backed up too. So, Nancy, where are they going to get their money? I will tell you this. I think that all of our politicians should not be able to take any money from anything, not from their savings, not from their bank accounts, not from their IRAs, not from Social Security, not from their retirement. They should not get a check until we get a check. And they should then try to figure out how they're going to starve. I mean, how they're going to keep from starving. They need to figure out where they're going to get their money from. If they had to be where the rest of us are, no money, people to feed, no source of revenue. If they had to be in that situation, like many of my clients are, then I think they would start making decisions a lot quicker and recognize a lot faster, because they're not suffering. There is no way that Nancy's suffering out of her multi-million-dollar townhouse in San Francisco. That ain't happening. She's got plenty of cash, and she's still getting her wage, just like all of the Congress people are getting their wage. Let's stop them all. Let's stop everybody. Nobody gets paid in government. Nobody gets paid in government until everybody gets paid. I mean, I don't think that small business and the individual shop owner and the individual waiter and waitress and those people, I don't think they should bear the brunt of this. I don't think they're the ones that should pay for all of this. We ask them to pay for everything else. We ask them to pay for our retirement. We ask them to pay for our health benefits. We ask them to pay for all kinds of other stuff. Now we're asking them to bear the burden of the whole recession, the whole depression on their shoulders because some politicians won't help out. Yeah, I don't think that's right. I think that the politicians should bear the brunt first, and then maybe that the other people will help out. Maybe the rest of us will help out. So anyway, it's that was political. Sorry, but it is economic too. That the money has run out. It's funny. I heard somebody say in the news the other day. I heard somebody say, yeah, that small business only has a couple months worth of reserves. Baloney. Those are the big small businesses. Maybe most businesses don't have 2 months worth of reserves sitting there. What they have is a very small amount, maybe a week's worth of reserves, maybe two, however long their payroll is. They may have 2 weeks worth of reserves. And then the rest of that money is money that's coming out of the owner's pocket. That is their retirement, is their savings. That's the money that's got to go back in. So what's happening today is you're forcing many business owners, especially here locally, you're forcing many business owners to make a decision between their employees and their immediate retirement, because many of our shop owners, many of our people that own these businesses are in their late 50s, early 60s. And this is a major setback. And if the economy takes 5 years to recover, it's going to take a long time for them to get back the money they're putting in, way past the time that they will be retired. So what you're asking them is, basically what you're asking many small business owners is take your retirement money and throw it back into the economy for the good of all. Well, I don't see any of the government people with their 401ks chipping their money back in. I don't see them doing that. They're not having to, and they're still getting paid. So, it's not fair to ask some of these businesses. Here's another thing that's interesting. I thought was and it's really unfair, but I've said this before. There's a difference between income and it's a difference between income and cash. Many small businesses report a significant amount of income on their tax return, but don't have any cash because the cash has to go back in the business. Businesses don't run themselves. I'll use a good example. Let's say that I make, let's say I make $1.2 million a year. I make $1,200,000 a year in gross income in sales. All right, that's my gross income, and from that I make $300,000 net. So let's say I got 1.2 and I make 300,000 net, which would be pretty good. All right, so that's a pretty high margin. That's probably not the case for most, but let's just use that. All right, so let's say that I I produce a product and it takes me 30 days to make the product, and then it takes me 30 days to collect. After I've given the customer the product, they have 30 days to pay. So, which is kind of standard. 30-day terms on a lot of things are pretty standard from a business standpoint. So now my sales are 100,000 a month. 1.2 million divided by 12, $100,000 a month. So I'm producing $100,000 a month. Well, here's a month. Let's say I got 1 month where I'm producing the product. So there's no revenue for that product. I'm paying the people to produce the product, but I haven't gotten paid yet, right? So they're getting paid because I need the product produced. So I have to put out some money to pay for them. I have to pay for materials, some items that are, they have to make the product. So they need some product to make. And so there's labor and there's materials and all of that. So let's say that that for that month, that's a total of $70,000. All right. It's $100,000 worth of sales, but my cost is $70,000. I'm making $30,000. So let's say it's $70,000. So now the next month I build a product and I bill $100,000 for the product, but I don't have the money yet because they haven't paid me. So now I've got 100,000 in receivables that I had that really should have gone to something that was done the month before, but I don't have that money out yet. I don't have that money yet. So I've got another, at cost, at least another 70, but I've got, say, 100 in receivables. So over a 2-month period of time, by the time I finally collect for the job I started 2 months ago, I've got a total of 140,000, let's say, into that deal. Now, when all is said and done on my tax return, I'm going to have made the 300,000 I said. But I couldn't take $300,000 in cash out because I had to leave 140,000 in to cover my receivables and to cover my inventory and the labor, the work in process. So even though on paper I made $300,000, the cash that was available to me was only 160. We say, well, that's a lot, but it's not really. I mean, and it's not 300. I paid tax on 300. So let's say I'm paying tax, and let's say that's another 30%. So now I paid $90,000 in taxes on that 300, of which I only had 160 in cash. And so now what do I clear? I got 90 from the 160, right? So I got $70,000. So I made $70,000. So I took all of this risk. I did all of this stuff. I've got all of my money invested in my business that I can't get out because it's not in cash. It's in receivables and work in process. And yet I've got to get cash out to pay taxes. So I had to use some of my cash to pay the taxes. I've got it invested in the business. And so now I made 70 grand. I have all of this responsibility for these people's jobs, and I made $70,000. Do you think I put any money in my 401k? No, I need $70,000 to get by. Family of 4, 70 grand. You can't make ends meet, by the time you pay for your housing costs. So So that's what small business is about, people. That is the real world of small business. When you own your business, that doesn't mean you're a multimillionaire and you can do whatever you want. You got it rolling in. I can refuse to pay you people. Yeah, maybe if you're the CEO of a Wall Street company, you could do that. When they're going to give you a few $1 billion to pay your payroll, including your own, you could do that. Small business is on a short leash. They're on a small string. They can't last that long, and they don't get that much to start with. And the fact of the matter is, most of the time they have to put up their house as collateral for stuff. They have to put their own name on the line. Who's signing the guarantee? Not all those employees are signing the guarantee for that. The small business owner signing that guarantee. So, we're asking the small businesses and by furtherance, their employees to bear the cost of this recession because we're not providing them with the money that's necessary. And I don't care, what you say. Yes, the money has not been distributed. It is not out there in the hands. It still is stuck in a bureaucratic uh, uh, deadlock. It will come out, but there needs to be way more than's out right now. That number needs to be out there for people not to worry. That needs to be double, because now that if we can get the economic impact disaster loans out there, that will make it happen. People will carry through. But right now, um, the PPP is not. I mean, I know some people that are going to potentially not even apply for the PPP because they don't think they can get it. But furthermore, they figure they're not going to be able to pay it back because all of their employees are gone. They already had to furlough everybody, and they can't get them back. At that point, there won't be any reason to get them back. Some of our businesses are seasonal here, huh? You wouldn't know it, right? So they don't have the same level of personnel in March that they have in July, let's say, or August. So sometime in July, we're going to be making a decision as to whether or not they spent the money on payroll. Well, who are you going to spend the money on? You don't have any employees at that point in time. You'd normally have laid them off by then because they were seasonal employees. And the seasonal employees know it. Some of them have left to go to other places to make money during that season. Some of them have already taken off. In fact, many of them have taken off early because they know that this economy is not going to open up here in Florida. And so they've already gone out to the Hamptons, or they've gone up to Maine or wherever they go to try to make a living, and wherever they go to. We have seasonal ag workers that come and go, and they've already gone to other areas of the country. We've got all kinds of seasonal businesses, whether it's retail or whatever. Sometimes it's a case that they've, maybe laid off. They have dropped down to a part-time from a full-time, or they've gotten rid of a position or two. But how do you maintain employment? You weren't going to maintain employment anyway. So all they'd be doing is borrowing the money. And, so instead of borrowing the money, they'll just fire people. And that's the situation you're forcing them into, because they don't have the money anyway. And it does not make business sense, because they would have done it in the past, to draw money out of your retirement account, which you don't have, or draw money out of your savings, which you probably don't have, to pay people when you're not going to generate any revenue from them. That it just makes sense, to close down at that point. So at that point, you just want to close it down, shut it down, or make it smaller, and that's what's going to happen. So I it was interesting this morning. I heard Mayor De Blasio talking about reopening, and he said this was one time he was going to be a conservative and be conservative about when they reopen, and he wanted to make sure that all the people were protected, and that and that all of those would be covered, and he was going to watch out for them, and he was going to make that decision to protect them and make sure that it didn't spike again, and that we didn't have a resurgence. And to do that, he was going to be very cautious about and very conservative about how rapidly he opened back up New York City. And I thought, well, that's really that's good. Okay. If you believe that, and the people there believe that, and they want to suck it up and go and suffer through with no income. But uh, shortly thereafter, actually at the same time, he said, by the way, New York City will need $8 billion from the federal government to keep going for the next few months. So he's willing to save the people in New York City, but I'm supposed to pay for it. Well, I don't like New York City. I know some of you love New York City and you've been to New York and you love New York and all that because we have a lot of people from New York. I don't. I don't care. I'm from the Midwest. I never cared to go to New York City. I didn't want to go. I was like in Green Acres. I was the one that was not take Manhattan. I was the other guy. I was Eddie Albert. I was good with just sitting back on and living in the Midwest and dealing with all that. I didn't need to see the big city, but I certainly don't want to pay for the big city because if I wanted to be there, I would pay for it. But I don't want to be there, so I shouldn't have to pay for it. I've made a choice not to live in that place, so I shouldn't have to pay for that place. And so, it's very easy for some of these politicians in these cities to say, yes, I'm going to do this to support my people. But by the way, you out there in Florida or in Illinois or in Iowa, you guys all need to chip in to help pay for my lifestyle. No, nope, we don't. Nope, we don't have to do that. I don't care if it's a crisis. We don't have to do that. I shouldn't be required to pay for a decision that they're making about a lifestyle choice at that point that I have no say in, and I shouldn't have to contribute to that. Just like for tax purposes, you shouldn't get a deduction on your tax return for state taxes that I don't live in that state. I mean, Florida, we don't have a state income tax. Why should I have to pay more federal taxes because you choose to live in a state that has a state income tax? I shouldn't. The tax law change was fair. That's why they capped off taxes at 10 grand. It's not fair that someplace like Florida that doesn't have an income tax, that we should have to support every other state because they get a deduction. So it's the same thing here, people. So de Blasio can make that comment. I'm all for it. And if he truly believes that, then that's fine. But pay for it out of New York money. Come from state taxes in New York, come from income taxes in New York City, which there is one, by the way. Just raise your taxes there. I'm okay with it. If that's how you're going to pay for it, it's like a homeowners association that needs the roof fixed. If I haven't chosen to put in the reserves, then special assess me. But don't special assess the condominium association next to me because they're not going to pay for it. They don't care that I need a new roof. And that's the way I am. I don't care that New York needs to stay another 6 months. That's fine. The people that have decided to live in New York need to pay that. That's a lifestyle choice they made to live in a city that was congested. They've made that decision. Pay more taxes. They're good with that, I'm sure, because they chose to live there. But don't ask me to pay it. And don't ask anybody else in any other state to pay it. And I don't think that's fair. But that's what's going to happen here. So this is what's playing out right now, is that these relatively high spending cities and states are rapidly forcing the federal government into subsidies. So they're forcing the government. As long as the government is indicating that they're shut down, then and is encouraging them to shut down, then I guess they've got an argument there because our elected officials federally have chosen that no one can work. Then I think everybody needs to pay. And if we don't like that, I guess we elect somebody else the next time. But now once that's lifted, then I think beyond that, it becomes a choice of a municipality or of a state. And if that state or municipality makes that decision, have a tax for that state. Let's have a special assessment, just like in my association when I have to have the roofs replaced. There's a special assessment. Cost me $7,000. Why did I pay it? Why couldn't I have gotten somebody that lived someplace else to pay it? Well, because they didn't live in my association and they weren't getting the roof. So it wasn't fair to ask the next door neighbor. In fact, even the people who lived in my association, they didn't ask the building next door to pay because the building next door had to do their own roof. And so they asked their people to pay for their own roof. That's the way it works, people. We pay for our own stuff. We don't ask for free stuff from other people. It is not fair to ask other people to pay. It's not fair to ask the young to pay for the old. It's not fair to ask for those that are working and trying to generate an income for their family and are barely getting by. It's not fair to ask them to pay for those people who choose not to work, who choose to maybe just work when they want to work. It's not fair to take and have those people who need kids in school, that need education, that need all of those things. It's not fair to ask them to pay for all kinds of other things. And it's tough enough to pay for the stuff they have to pay for. We ask them to pay for if they've got kids in a parochial school or a church school, a synagogue. We ask them to pay for other people's school and their school. So we're asking for people to pay for other people. Sometimes there's logic behind that, but we can't get in a situation uh, where we have to pay for everybody else in the country because they made a lifestyle decision. They choose not to take care of themselves, so they have higher health costs. I mean, if you think about it a minute, if everything is free, what value is there? So let's say all of our health costs, I'm off this tangent a little bit, but it's the same thing. If all of our health costs are free, then what are you going to do to conserve on your health costs? Doesn't come out of your pocket, right? Now, if you got a deductible, you got a copay, all of a sudden people start looking at their bill, right? It's the same thing here. If I'm in New York City, I just love that commercial. But anyway, if I'm in New York City and you know, I might as well stay home if I'm not paying for it, not coming out of my tax dollars. If I can just hang out, maybe stay up there for a while, and the people in Florida are going to pay for it. We'll take it out of the retirees' Social Security. How's that? That's not right, right? We got people on Social Security that are barely getting by down here in Florida. They're not traveling around the world on big money. Yes, we have some of those, but we have Social Security people who barely get by. They're barely making ends meet. Most of them have part-time jobs. Now we're going to ask them to pay a little more so that the people in New York can stay home a little longer. Nope, not going to do it. Shouldn't do it. And I think that's the George Bush comment, right? Nope, not going to do it. Not going to do it. Who is that? Yeah. Anyway, so that's where we're at, and I'm excited because some of this money's starting to come out, and there's a chance if we can get the economy back up and running by May 1st, not just starting May 1st, but getting back by May 1st, we got a shot. But I tell you what, if this thing goes to June 30th, so if we do a rolling thing where basically, we don't get certain things back right away and we roll them out over a 4 or 5 month period of time, then at that point, we are not going to make it. There's no way that these businesses are going to reopen here around here, that they're going to reopen in June, and staff fully up in June when nobody's even here and most people aren't spending yet. Think about it. You can open your business. You can't sell anything unless other people have opened their business. So, when they talk about what businesses they're going to open and this rolling start, well, that rolling start doesn't do a whole lot of good unless the people that got started early were people who are making money and can spend it. Right now, anybody who's opening early is probably opening so that they can keep putting the money into their business to keep it alive, to pay rent and everything else. I'm not sure how much excess money is going to be out there for discretionary income at this point. Maybe some, but really, when you think about it, and it's really not, not what you really want. The people that have the discretionary income are the wealthy. So really, what you need to do is probably roll this thing open so that the wealthy people have money in their pockets again, that they feel wealthy again. Get the stock market back up. Hopefully get it through the high enough that people feel comfortable with their stock portfolios. Get real estate prices up. Get some real estate sold so that some people feel like they have money, that their house is worth something, that they've got a cushion. So what you're talking about is trickle down economics. Nobody really loves that, but in reality, that's the way the economy generally works. Is that it's people with discretionary income that spend, that provide the income for the other people that have no discretionary income. So I mean, as a CPA, my biggest tax clients are the ones that make the most amount of money. They have the more complicated return. They pay more money. They have the ability to do that. Sometimes, I have to have the same amount of knowledge to do a simple 1040 as I do to do a 40-page 1040. You say, well, no, there's a lot of complicated stuff. Right. But when I walk into any tax appointment, I have that base level of knowledge that I have already accumulated. I've paid for it. I've gone to college. I've taken courses, became a CPA, take continuing education on a constant basis. I have all of that. The 1040 client, the simple 1040 client doesn't need it, but realistically, they should have to pay for it. It's there. For example, I can go into a hospital and I may not need a ventilator, but I could need a ventilator. So the ventilator's got to be there. So everybody who uses the hospital's got to pay for the ventilator, even if they used it. Now, those people who use it probably pay more. But the bottom line is that's the way the system works. And so the people that have more pay more. So now, are you going to do that? Are you going to funnel this money out to the wealthy first, instead of the working poor, or the working class, which is the bulk of us? I don't know. I think if you're going to get the economy going, you got to get discretionary income out there. It isn't those people who make $60,000 a year and have a family of four that are eating out 2 times or 3 times a week at the local restaurant. So they're not going to provide the restaurant jobs. They're not the people that are traveling around and taking vacations. So they're not going to provide the hotel jobs. They're not going to provide the travel jobs. So where are you going to get the discretionary income from? See, that's what you have to realize when you're rolling out the economy, that there's a period of time that those people that have discretionary income have to have it and feel comfortable spending it. And until they feel safe, they're not going to spend it, because the income beyond that is not discretionary income. It is income that's generated from discretionary income. That is, in effect, trickle down economics, and it's a fact of life, particularly in a service economy. That I've got clients that do that. Build screen rooms. I've got clients that build high-end closets. I've got clients that do high-end homes. Are people putting in high-end closets if they don't feel like they got the money? No, that's discretionary income to a large degree. Are they putting on a screen room? Maybe if they built a house, but or put in a pool. But who's putting in a pool? I got a client that's a pool builder. Some of those are stopping. So people have to feel, the people with income have to feel comfortable that income is still going to be there before it becomes discretionary enough for them to spend it on the stuff that's going to make enough income for the people who will also have discretionary income. Let's face it, small business isn't going to have discretionary income for a while. It's going to take them a while to generate enough income to get their people back, pay off all this debt they've got, and get to the point that they've got some money to be able to support other people, whether it's by hiring additional people for new jobs. Small business isn't going to overhire right now until they know for sure that this thing is going to last, because they don't want to get into a situation where they get people on payroll again, start paying them, build up that cost, and then it shuts down again. So there's a trade-off here. There is a trade-off between making sure that the economy doesn't rear up and then misfire, because all of these businesses will then just incur a significant amount of cost again that won't be returned. And they won't be able to get that, they won't have that money. The other thing is that, we're looking at a significant cost of borrowing in the future. Taxes are going to be higher. So in that example where I took out, $90,000 of taxes and left them with 70,000, well, that number is going to be closer to 115,000 of taxes, and so they're going to be down under 60 at that point. So a family of four, all that risk, and you make 60,000, you take home 60,000 a year. Yeah, on paper you make 300. You take home 60. Why bother? Why bother? Why not just go get another job? I mean, let's face it. It's a whole lot easier to let somebody else worry about that. There's got to be some incentive for small business, and if small business is going to find out that they're always going to bear the brunt of this, they will never do this. There's no reason to. There's no reason to take that risk. Might as well make it be a government-owned business, and we'll just work for the government. If we're going to look for that handout constantly, might as well just look for it for the government. There's no opportunity for us to get ahead, for us to have the American spirit and entrepreneurial and start from nothing and build a. If that isn't going to happen, if that dream is dead, then there's a whole lot of other problems in the economy other than just that. That dream has to be out there. That thought has to be out there. I always had that thought. Did I ever get there? No, but I made a good life for myself. I made a good life for my family, for my kids. They're better than I am, and that's good. That's what I think most of us always hope, that our kids' lives will turn out better than ours. And I think our kids strive to have a life that's better than their parents. And so yeah, but why? Because why does that happen? Because I thought that I could do that. And in America you can. But if it becomes to the point that you can't, that you just have to risk everything constantly, you'd be better off not. You'd be better off just working, putting money aside, letting your kids, maybe have a good education. Maybe it'll be free because the government will pay for it. And then, you don't have to worry about it. I don't know, but I think something's going to have to happen here pretty quickly. The PPP loans, just as an update for what's going on, the economic impact disaster loans, like I said, you should start getting an email. You should get an email that says that you're going to get the money. The money will come in within about a day or two after that. It's going to be $1,000 per employee, up to $10,000. So whatever you put on the original application, that's what's going to come out. And you're going to see it in your bank account. It will go directly in. So be checking the bank account that you used on that economic impact disaster loan. It may not be the same one you've used on the PPP. So make sure which one it is. Go back in and check and see that money came in. I would suggest that you segregate some of these dollars. If you've got two of these loans going, I would suggest that you segregate, maybe temporarily open extra bank accounts so that you can track the use of those funds. And if you had to utilize money, let's say you have to use money to supplement payroll from your personal investment. So you put money into the company. I would show that putting it into maybe that account where the economic impact disaster loan money is coming out of, or the PPP money, putting it in there. Let's say it's for payroll, put it in there, and then go ahead and transfer the money out of there to pay the payroll. And then when you get the economic impact disaster loan, you can pay yourself back, so that you showed that you just borrowed from yourself. You didn't use your money to pay the payroll. You borrowed from yourself to pay the payroll, and then you paid it back when you get that PPP money. But you got to show that that's where it went, because if you paid off a loan, that's not a use of that. But if you paid payroll, it's going to qualify. So that's what you should do there. The PPPs, I understand that they've allocated out about 2/3 of the allotment. So it is extremely important that this week Congress approve that other $250 billion, because what's happening is the money isn't out there. It isn't being used yet, but it is stuck because it hasn't been allocated. It's been allocated, but it hasn't been funded. So the banks aren't taking applications in some cases at the big banks because they've already allocated as much money as they intended or thought they could get, and they don't want to allocate more money than they can get. I used this analogy the other day with a friend of mine. It's like Thanksgiving, and you're sitting at the table, right? And there was plenty of money. There was plenty of dinner rolls out there for everybody, but there's now one dinner roll left. and that dinner roll is going to go uneaten. Why? Because nobody wants to take the last one because they think it's allocated to somebody else. Same thing with the PPP. Nobody's taking the last bit of the money. So the last third or so of this allocation isn't really going to go out there because people are afraid that if they commit to it, it won't be there by the time that the loan is actually funded. So what has to happen is this $250 billion has to be in place so that they know that they will be able to get the money if they take an application now. It may take 3, 4, 5 days to get a loan approved by the SBA. If you've committed to and taken the application and given them a number, but there's no allocation left, then you're out of luck. And see, that's happening at the overall level, not at the individual branch level. They've allocated out among themselves. But what they're talking about is the bank itself has a certain amount of money that they've committed, and they're not willing to commit more because they don't know that it's going to be there. Their allotment of the original amount they feel like they've used. So until they know there's a second amount, until they know that there's an extra roll on the table besides that last one, they're not going to reach out and say, you can have that roll, or they're not going to take the roll themselves. So anyway, so that's where we're at with that. Stay on top of it. Watch for your stimulus check. That should be in. Keep in mind, if you make over $98,000 and over $200,000, you're not married filing joint, you're not eligible. So those small business owners, the one that reported $300,000 worth of income that only got $60,000 or $70,000 in cash, they don't get the stimulus check. The one that needs it, they don't get it. There again, small business, it's because income isn't the same as cash. If you learn anything, if you take away anything from if you take away anything from my show, take away the fact that there's a difference between income and cash. That's two different things. Even if you're a cash basis taxpayer, it's two different things. Take that away. Know that small business reports a lot of income and pays a lot of taxes. They do not have a lot of cash. They do not take home a lot of cash. And especially not over a month's period of time. So anyway, there's where we're at with that. Keep an eye out for your stimulus check. $1,200 per person, $2,400 in total for married filing joint. And then you've got another $500 per child that should come out. So, roughly family of 4, you should be getting a check for $3,400 as long as you don't make over $198,000, I think it is. So there's an allocation process if you make over a certain amount up to that, but you'll get something. But basically, it's the threshold level is 198. You get nothing. And so, look at your tax return. If you're a sole proprietor, you can go out and apply for the PPP. You base it on your net income, your last tax return, which is something that just came out last night. So they've changed that, but you can. There's now a method that you can comfortably apply and know that you can get it forgiven. That's where we are on that. Otherwise, get on your Congress people to get this money to us and get it out there, because small business is wilting quickly, and it's not just the humidity here in Florida. It's a lack of cash. And it's not going to get better because there's not going to be any borrowing out there. Lines of credit aren't going to be easy to get when this much money has been put into the system. So anyway, keep in mind, take a look at it. I'm going to be back again next Wednesday here on WSTU. Write down the number 220-9788, 220-WSTU. If you've got some questions about some of these, or you got some friends that got questions about these economic impact loans or whatever, join me next Wednesday from 9 to 10 o'clock right here on WSTU Digital 1450. We are Martin County's Heritage Station.